Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Doogs Models. In this video, we're going to be testing out Hataka's orange line of lacquer-based paints. Now, before we get into looking at these paints, I have to note that you're probably going to be hearing a loud sort of humming, buzzing noise throughout the entire video, and tough shit, because that is my friendly air conditioner back here keeping the sweltering June heat at kind of at bay, making the garage somewhat livable. So it's going to be having a little conversation back here on its own. Just try to ignore it. Anyway, a few months ago I received a couple sets of Hataka's orange line lacquer paints just to kind of try out, and honestly I was excited to get them, and then I probably set them on a shelf and forgot about them. So Matthew Bull with Hobby World USA recently posted up about these, and there was, a little spur of conversation that kind of jogged my memory. It's like, oh shit, I've got a few of these sitting around. Why not test them out? Been meaning to for a while anyway. So what's the deal with these paints? Well, you may be like me, where when you first saw the name Hataka, you thought, that sounds Japanese. I'd kind of just been going off the assumption that it was Japanese for, I don't know, ever since I heard about them. And I've honestly pretty much written them off forever, because it's another, their typical line, I think it's a blue line, I don't know, is a dropper bottle acrylic, just like Vallejo, which, brushes nicely, but I try not to put these through airbrushes unless I have a damn good reason, and it's more for like a broad base foundational coat. I do not like the spray characteristics, especially with my preferred method of spraying small and spraying low pressure. These things, you thin them down enough to do that, and they start falling all over the place. So I've never had any use for the acrylic Hatakas, and I've heard some rather mixed things about them. But whenever a new lacquer pops up, hey, I love me some lacquers. I've got a whole shelf of Mr. Paint over here, got a whole drawer full of Mr. Color over here, so what the hell, why not? So anyway, this is the Royal Air Force set, so it's got pretty much all the colors you would, need to paint some sort of World War II RAF thing. It's got dark earth, dark green, sky, interior gray green, which gotta love it, ocean gray, and medium sea gray. Now, it is missing the tropical scheme stuff, so the the middle stone, the azure, things like that aren't a part of this. But for the temperate scheme, and for early war, the dark earth and dark green, and late war, the ocean gray, medium sea gray, etc. with the dark green, those are covered in here. So pretty decent set. Now let's have a look and see what these things look like. So basically, they come in a dropper looking bottle thing. It's plastic, which is interesting with lacquers. Anyway, they've got some sort of, you can hear it, some sort of ball bearing in there. So should mix up nicely. Color wise, let's see. Gotta kind of shake them to see what I'm seeing here. You'll see on like the dark earth, the bottom of this thing needs to have the pigments shifted around. A little bit of professional shaking. I probably shouldn't use the right arm. Got a fucked up shoulder at the moment, so repetitive shaking, probably not a good idea. But I can't freaking help myself. Alright, dark earth. Interior gray green. Shut up, compressor. You'll get your turn in a minute. Medium sea gray. Sky type S. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to swing this around so we can look at it on the desk instead of me sitting here holding these things up like a dipshit. So give me a minute and we'll be right back. Okay, so here are our colors. We've got interior gray-green. This looks maybe a little bit dark and not minty enough to me. I don't know. Tough to kind of tell. Got Sky Type S, which looks pretty decent from here. Dark Earth, which looks pretty good, maybe a little bit on the light side. Dark Green looks about right. Ocean Gray. I love Ocean Gray. And Medium Sea Gray. Color-wise, make your own judgments, but these are the paints. Now, one interesting thing to note, I mentioned earlier that when I first saw Hataka, I thought, you know, oh, that's got to be Japanese. It sounds totally Japanese. I think I've eaten at a Japanese restaurant called Hataka before. But Hataka is Polish, so the more you know. Anyway, with these, with this paint set, I also got a little jar of lacquer thinner. Now, that's nice. I happen to prefer the good shit, but we'll see how this kind of compares to it. And I also got this XP02 Paint Exfoliation Activator. I have no idea. I know what each of those words means individually. You know, paint obviously is paint. Exfoliation, I think that's, I mean, I know that from, like, you know, the scrubbing soap shit. Activator, obviously. I think this might be chipping fluid, maybe. I don't know what else you would, you know, what else exfoliation would really mean here. So it could well be chipping fluid. We might play with this, we might not. Anyway, this shit says that it is optimized for airbrush, solvent-based, etc. So I am not really willing to risk it in my custom Micron, but I think I'm going to give it a go in my HPC Plus. So instead of some kind of Mickey Mouse bullshit like spraying the paint into a paper towel or something, let's go ahead and test it in a more real-world application. So this is one of the Hellcats from the black basing series. This is the one that had the different shades of black laid on the wings to show what you can do there. So it's still mostly black. My preferred way of painting things. Now, in terms of paint, let's give, this one's the lightest one, so we'll see. You know, my friendly Mr. Paints over here in the corner are staring on and smirking because even their lightest colors have no problem covering over black. This stuff, I do not know. So, dropper bottle. Shit looks pretty thick. I mean, it says airbrush ready, but I don't know. That's a lot of legs, to use the wine tasting parlance. Yeah, that is thick as shit. Alright. See what a little bit of lacquer thinner can do here to... And since this thing has the crown cap on it, I can't do the back flushing to stir all this goodness, so we're going to use a pipette and use that to get it mixed. Okay, that seems a bit better in terms of flow, but it also looks really thin. Alright. Oh, this stuff is smelly. So early on impressions are once you open it up a bit, it does spray nicely. Gotta watch out though if you cover too. Yeah, this. I don't know. Seems like. Sorry for my rambling here. Okay, that's pissing me off. So, I suck at narrating as I paint, but a couple things that are going on here. So the first spray out of the airbrush, just neat. This stuff was thick and didn't really want to come out. So when thinned, it still has some hesitation. Like I don't feel as comfortable with this as I do with Mr. Paint. Maybe it approaches Tamiya, I don't know. I don't even think that. But here's the thing, to get the spray like this, I had to thin the fuck out of it. So it's very quick to do bad things. You can see it's very quick to fisheye on you. Spider and all that good stuff. And I'm only spraying at about 12 psi here. You know what, I'm going to dump this paint, I'm going to try a different color. See how that goes. Alright, what should we do next? Let's try interior green, why not? So this time out, I'm going to show you what spraying it neat onto the actual aircraft looks like. See, it comes out very grainy. Which is a sure sign that the paint is too thick. It's having trouble kind of squeezing its way out. Although I guess if you're going for a certain grungy look, it might be an option. See there, I mean, this could be used in a sort of grungy way for marbling, because then you can come in on top of it and do some interesting things with the blending. Like so. And I will note that when it's not thin, the fisheye thing is not anywhere near as much of a problem. Coverage is pretty good, but that spitting, you know, through this is hideous, and the coverage is probably about as good as Mr. Paint, I would say. Now let's try and see what happens if we add some Mr. Leveling Thinner instead of the Hataka stuff. Okay, so Mr. Leveling Thinner has been added in here, a few drops, and it's been mixed up, so let's go ahead and see how this does. See, it's still getting this like spitting action going on. Part of that is a sign that I need to clean the airbrush out better. Part of it is just, I mean, this paint did it, you know, the gray did it, the green's doing it. Now, if you're just using it as a marble and blend for a single color, that can be effective because it gives you a bit more randomness. You can see. And you know, this one over here, just feeling it, it's a nice, may not look it, but it's a nice smooth finish. So, all right, I want to try one more thing before I am willing to render judgment here. Okay, so the last thing I want to test is a bit of a control for the airbrush itself. Now, I'm not too happy with the spray patterns I've been getting in here, and I'm pretty sure it comes down to paint. But just to be sure, and as a little control mechanism, I'm going to try running some Mr. Paint Gray Green through here and seeing how it does. Could just be a sign that the old HPC Plus needs a good stripped down cleaning, or it could be the Hataka paint. Also note, if you look at these two colors, Mr. Paint is a lot paler than the Hataka. So, pick your poison. I'm not one to get all hung up on paint fidelity. They can always be tweaked in many ways, so who really gives a shit? But I know some people do. Let's see how the Mr. Paint stacks up. Yeah, it's not the airbrush. That's spitting, it's spraying small, and it's spraying large. That was super apparent on the Hataka. Nowhere to be seen on the Mr. Paint. So let's turn around and do some final thoughts of these Hataka orange line lacquers. Honestly, you know, I will give Hataka credit for expanding beyond the acrylic line and doing some lacquers. I'm always a fan of more solvent-based paints, you know, out there in the marketplace. The thing is, I also have a certain way that I like to paint. I like to paint small and controlled and thin and build it up over time, and these paints just don't seem to support that. You know, you saw as I was spraying the medium C gray over here, and tracking fun, and the interior gray green in here, and you know, up on the cowl, there was just a lot of spitting and graininess. Even when the paint was thinned, you know, it was just the pigment size or something. I'm not a paint chemistry expert, so I'm not sure exactly what is causing these performance issues, but it does not spray as tight as Mr. Paint, or honestly as tight as Tamiya or Mr. Color thinned with Mr. Leveling Thinner. I mean, you know, if we're going to go on a scale of paint awesomeness from 0 being like Model Master Acryl or something like that, to 100 being Mr. Paint and those nice controllable lines, that nice coverage that builds in a linear, very predictable fashion, this stuff is the gold standard for me. You know, so if that's 100, I would put Mr. Color at maybe a 95, Tamiya at maybe a 90, maybe in the high 80s, just because of its penchant to dust in hot weather. This stuff I would put in the 70s somewhere. You know, I will say it does give a nice finish. This stuff is very smooth, and if you, god damn, you know, if you look at sort of the specularity coming off of the paint, you know, I think it even has a bit more sheen to it than the Mr. Paint does. I mean, they're both nice and smooth, but it's got a bit more of a gloss sensation to it. So from a surface finish, it might actually, if you're just spraying straight and you're doing one color and you don't care about, you know, building in that opacity and contrast variation, it might be a great option for that. You know, if you're doing a Desert Storm Abrams or something, you know, get the tan and just go to town, get a nice, wonderful finish that way. But in terms of marbling and freehand camouflage and small details where you want that nice controlled spray, the grainy spitting that it does, even when thinned, to me, takes it out of contention immediately. So, you know, I'm glad that there's this option out there. I'm always a fan of having these convenient paint sets. I do kind of wish maybe they had, you know, do these per camouflage, because, you know, if I'm buying RAF, it's nice to, you know, have the stuff I need, but, you know, I maybe don't need the dark earth in there, or I don't know. The way that these sets get set up sometimes really confuses the shit out of me. And there's an annoying ass bug doing bug shit around here. So anyway, yeah, I mean, the finish is nice. The finish is nice and smooth. I have not done a sanding test or anything like that. There we go. Haven't done a sanding test to see how well it holds up, or, you know, if it skins or anything like that. Haven't done a chipping test. This is purely paint sprayability and performance, and honestly, on that level, to me, this is, you know, this is a B-list paint. If I can't get Mr. Paint, I'll get Mr. Color. If I can't get Mr. Color, I'll get Tamiya. If I can't get any of those, okay, I might give this a shot, but the odds of that happening, tiny. So that's that. I do think there's maybe hope for it if they can figure out whatever that is that causes that sort of graininess, and, you know, maybe get a formula that comes out of the bottle thinner, because honestly, this, you know, this stuff says optimized for airbrush. I'm not sure what airbrush. Maybe like a, you know, maybe a PS290 or something with a big ass trigger on it, big ass needle that can, you know, handle whatever you put into it. But it comes out pretty thick, and that's going to be a problem for smaller aperture airbrushes. You know, the HPC Plus choked on it. I couldn't even imagine what would happen in a custom micron. And thinned down, it runs into the problem that a lot of, I would say, it almost runs into like acrylic problems, where it gets into the, you know, things just get so thin it kind of doesn't hold up. It runs easily, you know, all that sort of fun hullabaloo. So yeah, that's that. You know, glad I got to give it a shot. Glad I got to satisfy the curiosity, but I'm pretty happy with the paints I have. So that's that. If you've been curious about the paints, that's my take. Try them for yourself if you want. If you think I'm an absolute idiot for not liking the way they spray, leave a comment. You know, all that good stuff. Anyway, I am going to power down now and go sweat my ass off in this awesome Texas heat. So thanks for watching, and check you later.